The grandfather clock in the study glowed 3:47 a.m., the kind of time that never belongs to ordinary life. At 72, sleep arrived in thinner layers, and every layer carried its own memories. The house had been quiet for hours, the radiator ticking, the wind combing the bare branches beyond the bay window, the faint smell of cedar still clinging to the bookshelves. Then the phone rang. A blocked number, a single vibration against the polished desk, a sound that pulled the mind into that old emergency posture. Heart first, breath second, thought last. The hand that reached for the handset felt older than the body, skin thin over bone. A tremor that arrived whenever fear surprised the blood. Hello. Silence. A long exhale through the receiver, ragged, close, too human for a prank. The air carried wet cold and panic. Then a voice, faint and fraying, as if the speaker fought to keep the syllables intact. Open the door. Please. So cold. The line cut. The study held its breath. The clock kept moving. The world refused to shift back into place. The voice had not belonged to a stranger. It had belonged to Nora, Eleanor Pierce, called Nora by everyone who loved her, gone 6 years, 3 months, and a handful of days. No funeral speech could push that gap closed. No condolence could fill a chair that stayed empty. No time could teach the mind to accept a voice that never returned. The medical chart had carried an end date and a cause. Sudden respiratory failure after a routine outpatient procedure. A complication, a tragedy, a paragraph of sterile language that never fit the warmth of her hands. But the voice on the phone had carried her cadence. The way she rounded words. The way she pushed air through a sentence when she wanted the listener to move, to act, to stop hesitating. A chair scraped on the hardwood. Feet found the hallway, bare soles meeting winter-cold boards. The house felt larger at night, each corner holding shadows, each room remembering laughter that no longer lived there. A soft knock reached the foyer. Not the confident knock of a neighbor, not the heavy knock of a delivery. A cautious tapping like someone uncertain of welcome. The voice returned, muffled through oak. Please, it's freezing. The deadbolt clicked, the chain slid, the door opened. Rain poured off the porch light like silver wire. A figure stood in the spill of yellow, soaked and shaking, hair plastered to a narrow forehead, clothes clinging to a too-thin frame. Not Nora. A young woman, late 20s, maybe younger under the exhaustion. A face that pulled the mind backward through decades with brutal force. The same sharp cheekbones, the same deep-set eyes, the same small scar above the left brow, a mark Nora carried from childhood when she fell off a bike and refused stitches. The girl's lips trembled, and the sound that emerged held gratitude and terror in the same breath. Thank you. She swayed, knees threatening collapse. A hand braced on the doorframe. The rain had soaked through her jacket, darkened her sleeves, turned her hair into ropes. A question rose in the throat and died there. A blanket came off the hall rack without thought. Another came out of the closet. The girl moved inside and the door closed against the weather. The warmth of the foyer did nothing for shaking muscles. The shaking came from deeper places. She sank onto the entryway bench, shoulders rounded, chin tucked, as if the house itself might strike her. A mug appeared from the kitchen within minutes, hot tea carried on steady hands that felt detached from the rest of the man. A lifetime of habits had taken over. Heat, shelter, calm. Comfort first. Questions later. Steam rose between them in the living room lamplight. The girl cradled the mug with both hands, fingers red, nails bitten, knuckles cracked. This house, still here. Her gaze swept the framed photos on the mantel. Nora in her gardening hat, laughing at a tomato plant. Nora holding a grandchild that never existed. Nora and Harold on the porch swing, faces turned toward the lake. The girl's eyes filled, then hardened, as if softness had become dangerous. My name is June Hart. June Hart Pierce, if the paper trail ever recognized it. The words landed gently, then detonated. Harold's chest tightened. The mind reached for a filing cabinet of memories and found empty drawers. No daughter. No secret granddaughter. No family branch left unvisited. The mug trembled in June's hands. I used her voice. A confession without ceremony, offered like a bandage ripped off fast. Your phone? Blocked calls? You never pick up unknown numbers. Not since 2019. Not since the scam calls. Not since the first fake hospice bill. Not since the Medicare fraud. You keep your gate shut. I needed you to open it. The air in the room turned thin, her voice. June's gaze dropped. The old voicemail greeting. The one she recorded on the kitchen landline when you two first moved here. The tape was still in a box with holiday cards. There were other recordings. Home videos. Clips from an old camcorder. Enough to build a model. Enough to create a call that would pull you to the door. A lifetime of grief surged, sharp enough to sting the eyes. Harold's mouth formed Nora's name. No sound escaped. June's shoulders shook, a single shiver that traveled like a wave. There was no cruelty in it, only desperation. I am not here for money, not for the house, not for pity. I am here because someone has been chasing me for months, and Nora is the reason. The room remained still. Outside, rain battered the windows. Inside, the grandfather clock kept counting. A question formed and finally reached the air. Family? June's nod was small. My mother, Evelyn Pierce, died last year. Ovarian cancer. She held on long enough to hand me a box and a truth. Evelyn was Nora's first child, born in 1973. Adopted out through a private agency that no longer exists. A closed file, a sealed record, a silence that lasted 50 years. Harold's hands opened and closed once, as if feeling for something that had vanished. Nora never. June's expression carried a quiet ache. Nora never shared it. She never got the chance. Evelyn found Nora 3 years ago. A DNA match, a letter, a meeting in a cafe in Ann Arbor. No drama, no shouting, no accusations. 2 women with the same hands, the same laugh, sitting across from one another with coffee cooling between them. June's eyes moved to a photo on the side table, Nora holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Nora visited Evelyn twice. Quiet visits, long walks, old stories. Then Nora's health crash happened. Then Nora was gone. Then Evelyn carried the weight alone until the cancer took her too. The air thickened with the kind of grief that never fit into condolences. June set the mug down carefully, fingers reluctant to release warmth. Evelyn left me the box. Letters, papers, a key, a drive. The last thing she left me was a warning. June's voice dropped. Nora did not die the way everyone believes. A pulse thudded in Harold's ears. The room tilted in tiny increments. The hospital paperwork, the procedure, the complications. June's gaze held steady. Evelyn believed the paperwork was staged. Nora believed it too, near the end. Nora started pulling threads. Someone noticed. The threads snapped. Nora disappeared into a diagnosis that made the insurance claim disappear too. The word insurance landed like a stone. Harold's jaw clenched. The life policy denial. After Nora's death, a letter arrived from Lakeview Mutual Life. Condolences. Then the denial. Pre-existing condition. Non-disclosure. Exclusion clause. A paragraph that turned 25 years of premiums into nothing. Harold had fought, filed appeals, assembled receipts, visited offices, written letters. A wall of polite refusal. June leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped tight. A system existed, a small machine hidden inside billing codes and benefit forms. It worked in the space between grief and paperwork, where people sign without reading, where families accept the first explanation because their hearts cannot carry more. June's words came slow, as if each one had weight. Nora's death certificate carried a code. That code triggered a clause. That clause shifted financial responsibility from the insurer to the family. The hospital collected. The insurer avoided payout. A third-party review company collected fees. A legal team collected retainers. Everyone collected, except the widow or the widower. June's throat tightened. Nora tried to prove the code was wrong. Harold's fingers dug into the armrest. How? June pulled a small plastic bag from her pocket. Inside, a silver key attached to a paper tag. Safe deposit box, First Federal Bank, branch on Washtenaw, box 913. Harold's breath stalled. Nora never held a safe deposit box. June's mouth pressed into a line. Nora opened it 2 weeks before the procedure. Same day she requested her full medical record. Same day she started recording calls on a little handheld device. The words brought a flood of images. Nora at the kitchen table, paperwork spread out, a furrow in her brow, a tone in her voice that never reached full fear, because she refused fear the way she refused weakness. Harold's mind returned to a detail from that month. Nora woke at 2 a.m. and sat in the living room with her laptop open, the glow reflecting off her cheek. She minimized the screen when Harold walked in. A small movement, a small secrecy, a kindness, maybe, trying to spare him worry. June's gaze flicked toward the front window. They found me because I started looking. I filed a request for Evelyn's sealed adoption file. I reached out to a medical coding specialist. I contacted Lakeview Mutual. I requested the claim review notes. Someone responded fast. Too fast. The next day, a man waited outside my apartment building. The day after that, my mailbox was empty in a way it had never been. Then my credit alert app flagged a new inquiry. Then the calls started. June's hands shook again. Blocked numbers, long breathing, a single phrase. Stop digging. Harold's mouth went dry. Who? June's eyes hardened. Dr. Calhoun, the surgeon who signed Nora's discharge order, Meredith Rowe, a claims executive at Lakeview Mutual, and a lawyer with a soft voice and clean nails named Paul Hartford. Hartford and Avery. Nora's insurer used them during the denial. His name was on every letter. Harold's memory snapped to a signature line. Paul Hartford, Esquire, the man who offered sympathy with one hand and removed the policy payout with the other. June's gaze held Harold's face like she was measuring him. And there is another name. A woman. The person who kept calling Nora during those last 2 weeks. The person who offered to help with paperwork. June lifted a photo from her jacket pocket. A printed screenshot, edges worn. An image pulled from a social media profile. A polished woman in a navy blazer, blonde hair in a perfect wave, a smile that carried nothing soft behind it. Name under the photo, Vanessa Calhoun. The world narrowed. Harold had met Vanessa once, a hospital fundraiser dinner 4 years ago. Nora liked helping with the community clinic. Vanessa had sponsored a table, shook hands, carried herself like the room belonged to her. Vanessa had leaned close to Nora, shared a private joke, then moved on. Harold's stomach tightened. Vanessa, June nodded. Same last name as the surgeon. Not a coincidence. The room fell quiet. The grandfather clock clicked past 3:58 a.m. June pulled another item from the box she carried. A thin USB drive wrapped in tape, labeled in Nora's handwriting. For H. Harold's fingers hovered above it without taking it, as if contact might burn. June placed it gently on the coffee table. Evelyn never listened to it. Fear kept the drive sealed. Fear kept her quiet. Fear kept her alive long enough to bring me into the world and raise me. Cancer ended the fear. Cancer ended the silence. June's shoulders lifted once with a shaky inhale. Now it's only time. Harold's hands moved, slow and deliberate, and the USB drive disappeared into a pocket like a relic. A new sound reached the living room, the faint hum of a car outside, headlights sweeping across the wall, then pausing. June's body went rigid. Harold's gaze drifted to the curtains, then away, as if sight might invite danger. A second car sound, a door closing, footsteps on wet gravel. The house was not invisible anymore. June stood, blanket slipping from her shoulders. Back door. Now. Harold's body moved without thinking, the old instincts of a man who had protected a family for decades. Motion, plan, calm voice, quiet steps. The kitchen lights stayed off. The back hallway remained dark. The door to the mudroom opened with care. Rain smell rushed in. A shadow moved near the front porch again. A soft knock returned, firmer this time. Harold's spine stiffened. June held up her phone. The screen glowed dim in the dark. Emergency call already queued. Harold's gaze shifted to the back door. A gate existed. A narrow path down to the lake. A neighbor's dock. A boat shed. A place to disappear for a moment. A thump reached the front door, heavier. June's breathing turned shallow. Harold moved to the pantry, lifted the floorboard that had always squeaked. Under it, an old lockbox. Inside, a small revolver that had belonged to Harold's father. A relic, a last resort. Harold's hand hovered, then closed the box again. Not tonight. The phone in June's hand vibrated. A text on screen. We see you. Then another. The old man can't save you. Harold's blood went cold. The porch footsteps retreated. Car doors closed. Engines started. Headlights swept away. The night returned to quiet, but the quiet felt different, like a calm that belonged to a hunter waiting. June's shoulders slumped in relief that lasted only a second. They will return. Harold's voice came out low, steady. Morning arrives soon. The bank opens at 9. The safe deposit key opens a box. The box opens the truth. The truth opens doors. June's eyes shimmered, then steadied. No more running. The morning light arrived thin and gray. Rain still lingered, softer now, turning the driveway into mirrors. Breakfast remained untouched. Coffee cooled in mugs. Harold dressed in the same wool coat he had worn to Nora's memorial. The coat smelled faintly of cedar and thyme. June braided her hair tight, pulled a baseball cap low, and wore a jacket with deep pockets. She moved like someone who had practiced being unseen. The drive to First Federal took 20 minutes. Harold avoided highways, side streets, quiet roads, a route that did not pass the hospital. A sedan appeared in the rearview mirror twice, then disappeared, then returned. June noticed too. Her jaw tightened. Harold parked behind the bank, near the loading area where cameras covered the doors. He walked June inside with the slow confidence of an old customer. The guard by the door nodded at him, familiar. The teller window held a young man with tired eyes and a name tag that read, Andrew. Harold slid the key and the paper tag across the counter. Safe deposit box access. Andrew's expression shifted into professional caution. Account holder? Harold's voice remained steady. Eleanor Pierce, Andrew typed. A pause. Another pause. A glance at the screen. A glance back at Harold. That box. Access requires 2 signatures. Eleanor Pierce and Harold Pierce. Harold's stomach dropped. Nora set it up that way. Andrew continued, still cautious. Account shows a 3rd authorized user added last year. A June heart. June's face tightened. Evelyn's doing. Andrew returned with a small metal tray and a document for signatures. Harold signed with a hand that no longer shook. June signed too, letters clean and fast. A banker escorted them into the vault room. Cold air, fluorescent light, rows of boxes like silent teeth. Box 913 came out and slid onto a table. The lid opened. Inside, a thick envelope, a small cassette recorder, a spiral notebook with Nora's handwriting, and a sealed manila file stamped Lakeview Mutual Internal. Harold's throat tightened. Nora's hands had arranged this. The spiral notebook opened to a page marked with a red tab. If you are reading this, something went wrong. Harold's vision blurred. The next lines came in Nora's familiar loops, neat even when emotions sharpened. Dr. Calhoun changed my code. The words hit like a slap. The notebook continued. A helper appeared after my clinic fundraiser dinner. Vanessa Calhoun. She framed herself as a patient advocate. She pushed me toward the procedure. She pushed me toward the clinic. She pushed me toward the surgeon. She framed it as routine. She framed it as safe. She framed it as quick. A tremor returned to Harold's fingers. The notebook carried a timeline. Dates, names, phone numbers, a list of claim codes, a list of clause triggers, a list of medical terms written with the precision of someone who had done homework. June leaned closer. Nora's notes included a phrase repeated in the margins like a warning. Code is a weapon. Harold opened the manila file. Inside, printed emails, claim review notes, an internal memo with a subject line, Pierce claim, ensure exclusion. The memo carried Meredith Rowe's name. Harold's jaw clenched. Lakeview Mutual knew what they were doing. A second file appeared beneath. Hospital billing statements with codes circled. A change from post-procedure complication to pre-existing chronic condition. A neat little shift that turned a covered event into an exclusion. June's hands trembled over the paper. There is more. The cassette recorder sat heavy in Harold's palm. A small plastic device from a different era. Nora had kept it like a secret. A button pressed, a faint click, a hiss of tape. Then Nora's voice filled the vault room, intimate and close, as if she sat across the kitchen table again. Harold froze. The recording continued with another voice, smooth and professional. Vanessa Calhoun's voice. The tone carried warmth and authority, like someone who believed she could shape reality by speaking it. Words emerged, clear enough to cut. The insurer will deny unless the code changes. The hospital can help. The family will accept the explanation. No fight, no publicity. Quiet equals safety. Nora's voice returned, sharper. This is fraud. Vanessa's tone remained calm. This is optimization, a standard practice. You have nothing to gain by resisting. You have everything to lose. A pause on tape. Then Nora again. If anything happens to me, this recording goes out. Vanessa again, cooler now. Nothing will happen. The procedure will go well. The code will be correct. Everyone will move forward. The tape clicked. Nora's breath heavy, close. A final line emerged, one that tightened Harold's chest into a fist. If I am gone, find Evelyn. Find June. Do not let them rewrite me. The tape ended. In the vault, fluorescent light hummed, indifferent. June's eyes shone with tears that did not fall. Harold closed the recorder with care, as if it were fragile glass. Proof existed. Not a rumor. Not a suspicion. A recorded voice. A documented plan. An internal memo. A pattern. Harold's pulse steadied into something cold and focused. The bank lobby felt too bright after the vault. The world outside the windows felt unreal. Cars moving, people living, unaware of the machine hiding inside paperwork. A text arrived on June's phone. You took the wrong thing. Another. Leave the box. Walk away. June's face went pale. Harold's gaze swept the parking lot through the glass doors. The sedan waited across the street. Engine running. Dark windows. June's fingers hovered above the emergency call. Harold reached into his coat pocket and touched the cassette recorder. The tape felt like an anchor. A decision formed. No direct run to police. Not yet. Too many connections. Too many chances for evidence to vanish. A journalist. A federal investigator. A prosecutor outside the county circle. Harold drove June to the county Veterans Hall first, a building that smelled like coffee and old wood. A friend waited there, Tom Alvarez, a retired postal inspector who had spent 30 years tracking fraud through paper trails. Tom's eyes narrowed when the file appeared on the table. This is not a small scheme. Tom's words carried certainty without drama. Hospital, insurer, legal firm, patient advocate. That is a ring. June's shoulders lowered a fraction, relief that someone else saw the same shape. Tom flipped through Nora's notes, careful, methodical. This needs duplication. Multiple copies, multiple locations. One copy in the hands of a reporter. One in the hands of an agency that does not respond to Lakeview's friends. Tom opened a drawer and pulled out a burner phone and a notebook. A contact exists. Investigative reporter. Detroit Free Press. Name, Lila Monroe. June's breath trembled. Reporter will publish? Tom's gaze stayed steady. A reporter will verify? A reporter will protect the story by making it too large to bury. Harold watched June's face. Fear, hope, a fierce determination that came from loss. The next hour became a logistics sprint. Copies made at the hall's old printer. Scans uploaded to a secure cloud folder under Tom's control. The cassette recorder duplicated onto a digital file. A second USB drive created. Then a sealed envelope prepared. For Lila Monroe. Harold drove the envelope himself, along with June and Tom, to a coffee shop in Detroit, where Lila waited in a back booth. A woman in her 40s, eyes sharp, hair tied back, laptop open, posture alert. Lila listened without interruption. The cassette audio played through headphones. Her face did not soften. It hardened. This is bigger than your family. Lila's fingers tapped on the table once, a small signal to her own mind. This is patient exploitation, insurance manipulation, possible homicide, depending on medical tampering. Harold's throat tightened. Homicide is a heavy word. Lila's gaze did not flinch. A suspicious death plus a scheme plus a recorded voice equals federal interest. Lila slid a business card across the table. FBI White Collar Division. Agent name, Raphael Kim. A contact already used on a previous corruption story. A man who loved paper trails more than speeches. June's hands clenched around the card. The coffee shop noise faded. The world narrowed to the plan. Lila continued, voice calm. Media pressure plus federal investigation plus a controlled confrontation equals a confession or a panic move. Panic moves create evidence. Harold's mind ran through the past 6 years. Nora's denial letter, Nora's last weeks, the hospital's quick explanations, Vanessa's hand on Nora's arm at the fundraiser, warm smile, cold eyes. Harold's jaw tightened, a confrontation. Lila's gaze stayed on him. No heroics, no shouting, a controlled environment, recording in place. Authorities close enough to move fast. A settlement meeting framed as negotiation. The ring will believe a widower wants money and closure. The ring will believe silence can be bought. June's voice came quiet. They will try to take it. Lila nodded. They always try. The days between the hotel meeting and the first headline carried a different kind of danger. The ring did not vanish overnight. It shed skins, shifted positions, searched for leaks, and looked for the smallest opening to regain control. A letter arrived in Harold's mailbox on the 4th morning after the bank vault visit. No return address, plain white envelope, no stamp, hand-delivered. Inside, A single sheet of paper held one sentence in clean printed font. The recording will not save her. June held the paper with a stillness that frightened Harold more than shaking would have. Fear had moved into her eyes in a quieter way, like a storm cloud settling instead of passing. Tom inspected the envelope with latex gloves. He lifted it by the corners, scanned for smudges and fibers, then sealed it in a plastic bag. A message like that does not exist alone. A message like that is a probe. It checks whether the target retreats. It checks whether the target panics. It checks whether the target has protection. That afternoon, a second probe arrived through a different channel. Harold's bank account showed a login attempt from an IP address in Toronto. Two-factor blocked it. The attempt repeated twice more, then stopped. June's credit monitoring app flagged a new employment inquiry with a company name she did not recognize. Tom's burner phone received a call that hung up immediately. Harold's mind returned to a lesson learned in the factory years ago, when he supervised a building maintenance team. Theft is rarely loud. Theft starts with testing doors. Tom helped Harold build a wall made of small steps. Every account password changed. Every security question updated with nonsense answers that could not be guessed. A freeze placed with all 3 credit bureaus. A fraud alert added. A new checking account opened at a different bank for daily expenses. Automatic bill pay moved to the new account. The old account left nearly empty, a decoy with alarms enabled. June created a clean phone, a fresh number, a new email address. The old phone stayed powered down inside a metal tin in the pantry to reduce location pings. Lila instructed Harold to keep a simple journal, not an emotional diary, a log. Date, time, what happened, what appeared, what disappeared, anything unusual. Harold complied. A pen moved across a yellow legal pad each night. Saturday, 9:18 p.m. Unknown sedan near mailbox. Sunday, 1:04 p.m. Doorbell camera motion, no person visible. Monday, 7:40 a.m. Mailbox empty, delivery later than usual. On Wednesday, the ring tried a different angle. A uniformed officer arrived in the morning with a clipboard and a calm face. A wellness check requested by an anonymous caller, concerned about an elderly man living with a disturbed young woman. The phrasing felt calculated. Harold stood in the doorway, posture steady, voice polite, offering identification, offering June's ID, offering the facts without drama. June remained in the background, visible, calm, composed. Tom arrived during the interaction, carrying coffee as if the timing were accidental. Tom greeted the officer like a neighbor, then offered his retired inspector credential. The officer's posture shifted, less casual, more careful. The wellness check ended quickly. The officer departed without incident. No threats, no arrests, no drama. The message remained. The ring could summon authority with a phone call. The next day, a second authority attempt arrived. A nurse from the hospital system called Harold's landline with a cheerful tone, claiming a follow-up appointment had been scheduled for Harold due to recent cognitive concerns. The hospital system name matched the one Nora used. June listened on speaker. Her face turned white. Harold refused the appointment. The nurse persisted with reminders of safety. Harold ended the call. Lila's voice came through the phone afterward, calm and sharp. A common maneuver. If the ring plants a confusion narrative, courts listen, banks listen, families lose standing. Elder exploitation cases often start with those phrases. June's mouth tightened. They will try to mark me unstable too. Tom's gaze stayed hard. Then the counter-move becomes visibility. Evidence, multiple witnesses, no isolation. The counter-move started with a simple step. Neighbors. Harold invited 2 neighbors over for coffee, people he trusted. No details at first. A small introduction. June's presence normalized. A story of long-lost family reconnection without the darker edges. Then, when comfort formed, Harold described the threats and the investigation. The neighbors reacted with quiet outrage, not panic. One offered to keep her porch light on all night. The other offered to park her car facing the Pierce driveway as an extra visible presence. Community became a shield. On Friday night, the ring tested again. A rock hit the back window at 11:32 p.m. Glass did not shatter. The sound still punched the nerves. Harold and June moved to the hallway, lights still off, cameras watching. A figure moved near the fence line, a hooded shape, fast, deliberate, then gone. Tom arrived within 10 minutes, breath calm, eyes scanning, hands steady. Another probe. Tom reviewed camera footage frame by frame. The figure kept face hidden. The figure approached the window, tossed the rock, paused, then moved away. Tom paused the footage on one still frame. A wristwatch flashed in the porch light for a split second. A distinctive face. A rare model. Tom's mouth tightened. That watch belonged to Paul Hartford's driver. Hartford liked being driven. Hartford liked control. A link. Another strand for Agent Kim. Agent Kim's team responded in a way that shifted the balance. A quiet car appeared 2 houses down in the evenings, unmarked, parked with patience. A second car rotated in. No flashing lights. No drama. Presence. The probes stopped. Then a new pressure arrived, not outside, but inside Harold. A letter from Lakeview Mutual's legal department arrived with an offer. A goodwill payment for emotional distress, contingent on immediate release signatures. The offer was timed. It arrived before subpoenas, before a public story, before any accountability. The money amount was large enough to tempt a tired person. Harold placed the letter on the kitchen table and stared at it for a long time. June watched him quietly. Her eyes held a question without words. Harold folded the letter in half and slid it into Tom's evidence folder. No deal. No quiet. Another envelope arrived 2 days later, this time with a different tactic. Inside, a copy of a photo from Harold's porch last month. Harold and June sitting on the swing, mugs in hand. Taken from a distance, slightly blurred, but clear enough to confirm surveillance. Under the photo, a line printed in black. Be careful with your new family. June's hands shook as she held it. Harold's hand covered hers. The ring tried to weaponize belonging. Harold refused the weapon. June's voice emerged in a thin thread. I pulled you into this. Harold's gaze stayed steady. Nora pulled me into it first. Nora built the vault box. Nora built the tape. Nora planned for a day like this. That plan is the reason you are alive, and I am awake. June inhaled, then exhaled slowly, a small recovery. A new step formed, practical. A temporary relocation for June during the most volatile phase. Agent Kim offered a safe arrangement through a witness support partner, a small apartment with controlled access and anonymous lease. June refused. Not pride, not stubbornness. Strategy. If I disappear, the ring will frame it as guilt. If I vanish, they will push the unstable narrative. If I stay, cameras watch. Neighbors watch. Agents watch. Tom nodded, respect in his eyes. A strong read. Then a new sound arrived in Harold's home. June's work. June had skills that Nora never possessed, not because Nora lacked intelligence, but because June lived in a different era. June knew how to peel back digital layers. June opened the insurer denial packets and examined metadata. She examined timestamps. She examined editing logs embedded in PDF files. She examined email headers from the documents pulled out of the vault file. One night at 2:12 a.m., June found an anomaly. A claim review PDF had been edited 3 times after the denial letter date. Edited by an account named MLK-ADMIN. a hidden admin account. The editing took place on a server in a building that did not belong to Lakeview Mutual. June traced the IP to a third-party review company, Medlex Analytics. Tom's eyes narrowed. Medlex did independent claim review. Medlex influenced denial outcomes. Medlex likely received a slice of the savings. Another branch. June built a network map on her laptop. Nodes and lines, names and companies, shared addresses, shared phone numbers. Hartford and Avery linked to Medlex through a shared office suite rental. Vanessa linked to Medlex through a nonprofit board membership. The map grew dense. This is not a three-person scheme, June breathed. Tom's gaze stayed calm. It is a business model. Lila requested the map and began calling sources. Former claims adjusters. Former hospital compliance staff. Former Medlex analysts. People who carried guilt and bills and a desire to be heard. A former Lakeview adjuster agreed to meet in a parking garage and hand over a thumb drive. Inside, internal training slides. How to reduce payouts. How to flag high-friction families. How to use advocate notes to support exclusion narratives. How to partner with hospitals for documentation alignment. The word alignment appeared repeatedly. Alignment was the soft word for a hard act. The thumb drive went to Agent Kim, then to prosecutors. The case became an avalanche. A second former employee surfaced, a Medlex analyst who had logged the edits on Nora's file. The analyst had quit after a breakdown and moved to Arizona. Lila connected through an old friend. The analyst agreed to speak with Agent Kim under protection. A statement emerged. Vanessa personally pushed high-profile files. Hartford personally reviewed releases. Calhoun personally signed the chart addendum. The statement placed hands on the machine. The machine had names now, not just codes. By the time Friday arrived, the hotel meeting was not a gamble. It was a controlled stage, a place for the ring to reveal itself under pressure. That was why Vanessa's line in the hotel carried such weight. Nora would have lived if she stopped. The line was not just cruelty, it was confirmation of intent. Friday arrived with cold sun and sharp wind off the lake. The city looked crisp and indifferent. Lila waited in the hotel lobby, not near Harold, not near June, blended into the flow of business travelers. A small camera sat in her bag, a recorder clipped to her jacket lining. Agent Raphael Kim waited in an unmarked car outside, 2 agents with him, listening to a live feed from the conference room camera Tom had installed the night before. Harold sat at the conference table with June beside him, posture straight, hands calm. A folder lay in front of him, thin, deliberate, not the full evidence set, a decoy and a guide. The door opened at 2:01 p.m. Paul Hartford entered first, gray suit, calm face, eyes scanning. Behind him, Meredith Rowe, a woman with a tight smile and a tablet in her hand. Behind her, Vanessa Calhoun, navy blazer, perfect hair, eyes bright with calculation. Dr. Calhoun did not appear. Vanessa had chosen the meeting anyway. That choice felt like arrogance. Hartford took a seat without invitation. Rowe sat beside him. Vanessa remained standing for a moment, gaze fixed on June. The resemblance landed between them like a knife. Nora's eyes, Nora's cheekbones, Nora's quiet fury. Vanessa's lips tightened. June Hart. A recognition, not a greeting. June remained still. Harold slid the folder forward. A settlement exists. A public story exists too. The choice belongs to Lakeview and to whoever helped create this denial. Hartford's tone stayed mild. A denial happened within policy terms. Grief magnifies misunderstandings. Litigation would be costly. A compromise could reduce strain. Harold's mind tracked the language. Neutral, soft, meant to calm. Harold's voice stayed flat. The tape exists. Nora's tape. Vanessa's voice. A flicker crossed Vanessa's face. Not fear yet. Annoyance. Harold continued, letting silence stretch between phrases. The internal memo exists. Meredith Rowe's name. A coded instruction to force exclusion. Rowe's fingers tightened around her tablet. Hartford's posture shifted slightly, a muscle tension at the jaw. Harold leaned forward a fraction. A question sits at the center. Why did Nora's code change? Who ordered it? Who benefited? Vanessa's expression warmed into the practiced smile. A lot of people misunderstand coding. It's complex. Hospitals choose codes. Insurers review. Nothing personal. Harold's gaze remained fixed. Nora recorded you. Vanessa's smile thinned. Nora recorded a conversation where the phrase optimization appeared. Rowe's eyes darted to Hartford, then back. Hartford's tone remained controlled. If a staff member used an unfortunate phrase, that does not prove misconduct. Harold opened the folder and slid out a single page. The memo excerpt with Rowe's line highlighted. Ensure exclusion. Do not pay. The paper landed quietly. Rowe's skin paled. Vanessa's calm cracked for a second. Harold's next move came slow. A second page slid forward. A timeline Nora wrote with dates and a list of calls. The list included Vanessa's number. Hartford's gaze sharpened. This is sensitive. Confidential. Harold's voice held a quiet steel. A settlement can keep it confidential. A number exists for silence. A bigger number exists for the full story to go public. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. How much? The word arrived without softness. Not a negotiation phrase. A demand. Harold's chest tightened. The machine had revealed itself. June's hands remained folded in her lap, still as stone. Harold placed a number on the table, high enough to draw attention, low enough to sound plausible. Vanessa's eyes flickered. Rowe's throat worked. Hartford's fingers tapped once. Hartford leaned in. If a settlement happens, releases must be complete. No further action. No outreach to media. No agency involvement. Harold's gaze stayed fixed. A release depends on truth. Vanessa's patience frayed. Truth is that Nora had a complication. Risk exists in all procedures. The code reflected medical reality. Harold reached into his coat pocket and placed the cassette recorder on the table. A small plastic rectangle, outdated and powerful. Vanessa's face changed. Not fear yet, but the first crack. Harold pressed play. Nora's voice filled the room. Vanessa's voice followed. The phrase appeared again. The insurer will deny unless the code changes. Rowe's mouth opened, then closed. Hartford's jaw clenched. Vanessa's gaze snapped to the recorder. Turn that off. The demand arrived sharper now, more human. Harold's finger lifted the pause button but did not press. A question formed, delivered like a blade. If Nora's code reflected medical reality, why did Vanessa Calhoun place herself inside the coding conversation at all? Vanessa's eyes flashed. Patient advocacy, support, helping families navigate. Harold's gaze did not move. Nora's chart showed a nurse note. Patient advocate present. Advocacy staff member, V. Calhoun. Rowe's voice cracked. That is hospital documentation, not ours. Harold's gaze shifted to Rowe. Then why did Lakeview receive the advocate notes inside the claim review packet? Rowe's fingers tightened around her tablet until her knuckles whitened. Hartford's voice remained level, but tension lived under it. Internal exchange exists between partners. Hospitals send materials. Insurers evaluate. June finally leaned forward. Her voice came quiet, controlled. Evelyn Pierce died last year. Cancer. Before death, Evelyn placed a box in my hands. Inside, this key. Inside, this tape. Inside, a note. June's eyes locked on Vanessa. The note described a a machine that rewrites women into codes. Vanessa's smile returned, brittle. This is emotional. Grief makes people chase patterns. June's next line arrived like ice. A pattern exists. 27 claims in 3 years. Same advocate, same insurer, same exclusion clause, same law firm, same coding shift. Rose's face turned gray. Hartford's eyes widened a fraction. Vanessa's gaze snapped to Roe. 27. Rose's throat worked, but no sound emerged. Harold watched the split. They did not share full knowledge. The ring had compartments. Vanessa leaned closer to Roe, voice low enough to be private. What did you do? Rose's eyes darted to Hartford. Hartford's tone sharpened. Meredith, control yourself. June's phone vibrated in her pocket. A silent buzz. A message from Agent Kim, visible through a quick glance. Keep them talking. We are ready. Harold's voice remained calm. A settlement can cover Nora's policy. It can cover Evelyn's adoption file. It can cover the hospital's liability. It can cover Meredith's internal role. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. Adoption file. The word landed heavy. Harold watched Vanessa's control slip another inch. Harold continued, steady. Evelyn's file stayed sealed until a request went in. Then someone attempted to block it. Someone at the agency level tried to mark it confidential due to patient safety, a strange phrase for an adoption record. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. You have no idea what you are touching. Harold's voice stayed flat. Nora touched it first. Nora tried to walk away. Vanessa's expression changed from brittle calm to something sharper. Nora got curious. Curiosity carries consequences. Roe inhaled, a tiny sound of panic. Hartford's gaze snapped to Vanessa. Vanessa. Vanessa's eyes remained fixed on Harold. Nora would have lived if she stopped. The conference room door opened again. Hard this time, not polite. 2 agents stepped in. Badges appeared. The atmosphere shifted like a slammed door in a storm. Vanessa's face drained of color. Rose's tablet slipped from her fingers and clattered on the table. Hartford stood too fast. A calm voice filled the room. Agent Kim's, controlled and firm. Federal investigation. Remain seated. Hands visible. Vanessa's eyes darted to the window, to the hallway, to June, to Harold. Roe began to tremble. Hartford's voice rose, indignant, legal instincts kicking. This is privileged negotiation, improper entry, you cannot. Agent Kim's gaze stayed steady. Conspiracy, wire fraud, insurance fraud, witness tampering, potential homicide referral to the state. The word homicide broke Rose's composure. Rose's face crumpled. It was not my plan. It started years ago. It started with Hartford's files and Calhoun's coding. It started with a simple clause. It became a factory of denials. Hartford's eyes flashed. Stop talking. Vanessa's voice cut through, sharp and cold. No more. Rose's breath came in shallow bursts. The Advocate program. It was Vanessa's. The hospital board loved it. Families trusted it. Patients trusted it. Then the claim optimization started. A code here, a note there, an exclusion triggered, money saved, bonuses paid. Vanessa stepped toward Roe, posture turning predatory. Meredith, enough. Agent Kim stepped between them. Roe continued, tears spilling now, words tumbling. Nora pushed back. Nora requested a second opinion. Nora refused to sign the privacy waiver. Nora recorded calls. Vanessa panicked. Vanessa's gaze snapped to Harold. Stop that. A command, not an argument. Rose's words kept moving. A file existed on Nora. A file flagged non-compliant. A meeting happened. Dr. Calhoun agreed to manage risk. A medication order changed. A discharge note shifted. A complication narrative formed. Harold's stomach turned. June's hands clenched tight. Vanessa's face hardened into something empty. Rose's voice dropped into a hush of shame. The code changed. The payout vanished. The story stayed clean. Hartford's face turned stone. Agent Kim signaled, and another agent placed cuffs on Hartford. Vanessa remained uncuffed for a beat, eyes locked on Harold. "This ends you." Her lips formed the words without warmth. Harold's gaze stayed calm. "It ends you." Vanessa's eyes flashed, then cuffs clicked on her wrists too. The room exhaled in a strange way. Not relief, not yet, but the first movement toward air. Outside the hotel, cameras waited. Lila stood with them, phone in hand, eyes bright with purpose. The story did not belong only to Harold anymore. The next weeks became a blur of documents, interviews, statements, and sleepless nights. Agent Kim's team requested the original cassette and the bank vault contents. The bank provided logs. The hospital provided records under subpoena. The insurer provided internal emails under federal order. Hartford and Avery's office faced a search warrant. Lakeview Mutual's server room faced forensic analysis. June stayed in Harold's home, sleeping with the lights on for the first week. Fear does not evaporate just because cuffs appear. Fear lives in muscle memory. A man appeared once at the end of the driveway, then disappeared when Tom stepped outside with a camera phone raised. A second car idled near the mailbox one afternoon, then rolled away when a neighbor walked over with a dog. The ring had edges. The edges twitched. Harold's home became a small fortress of ordinary people watching out for one another. Neighbors started leaving porch lights on. The mail carrier started knocking once at delivery, a subtle signal that someone was paying attention. A state medical board review opened. Dr. Calhoun's license faced suspension. A grand jury convened. Then a new document arrived. A revised death certificate request. Nora's cause of death reevaluation. Harold stared at the paper for a long time. A part of grief hides inside uncertainty. Knowing the truth hurts, but it also closes a door that has been slamming in the mind for years. The medical examiner's review did not paint pictures, did not describe suffering, did not add cruelty. It described inconsistencies, medication timing, chart edits, documentation irregularities. Patterns that supported criminal negligence or worse. The case expanded. June attended every meeting with Agent Kim, every interview with prosecutors, every review session with hospital compliance staff. She watched the machine from the inside now, not as prey, but as a witness. She kept one hand on the cassette recorder whenever fear rose. Nora's voice remained a compass. Then the headline hit. Lakeview Mutual Executive arrested in claim denial scheme. Hospital advocate program under federal scrutiny. Photos of Vanessa in cuffs appeared on screen. Photos of Hartford, too. Meredith Rowe looked smaller, not triumphant, not villainous, just hollow, the face of someone who chose greed and discovered the cost. Harold's phone rang for days. Old friends, neighbors, people from the community clinic, strangers who had lost spouses and received denial letters. Letters began to arrive, real paper letters, handwritten and shaky. My husband died after that hospital too. My sister's claim got denied with the same clause. My mother's code changed the night before she passed. A pattern, a machine. June read each letter and built a spreadsheet, then a binder, then a new file that Agent Kim's team added to the investigation. The ring was not small. It had touched dozens, maybe hundreds. Months later, a plea deal formed for Rowe, cooperation in exchange for testimony. Hartford fought harder, but evidence stacked. Vanessa attempted bail, but witness intimidation risk kept her detained. Dr. Calhoun attempted resignation. The medical board froze his license. Harold watched from his porch as the lake shifted from gray to blue, season rolling forward like it always did, indifferent to human tragedy. One afternoon, June stood at the kitchen counter with flour on her hands. Nora's recipe book lay open, the same battered pages, the same handwritten notes in the margins. June smiled for the first time without fear behind it. Nora used to add extra vanilla. Harold's throat tightened. Nora did. Always. June's shoulders lifted in a small laugh, quiet, surprised, as if laughter had been a forgotten language. The first real comfort arrived in a form Harold never expected. A small ceremony at the courthouse where adoption records got amended. Evelyn Pierce became Evelyn Pierce, officially, no longer a sealed secret. June's last name gained a new line in the system, not as a prize, as a correction. The judge who signed the amendment did not offer speeches, no moralizing, just a stamp and a quiet look that held respect. Harold walked out of the courthouse with June beside him, and the sun felt different on his face. Back home, Nora's sewing room became June's office. A laptop sat on the desk now, not dusty, not unused. June created a simple website with a clear purpose: help families appeal denials, request medical records, recognize manipulation. Harold funded a small nonprofit with the settlement money that eventually arrived. Not a fortune, not the kind that invites greed, but enough to pay for document requests and legal consults for people too exhausted to fight alone. The nonprofit carried Nora's name, the Nora Pierce Patient Defense Fund, a small line on a letterhead, a large promise in practice. Months later, another late-night phone call came. This time, the number was not blocked. This time, the voice did not belong to the dead. A woman on the line, trembling, a new widow, holding a denial letter in her hands, unable to breathe through the words. Harold listened. June built a plan. Tom created a paper trail. Lila prepared to watch. The machine met resistance. On a quiet Sunday, Harold and June sat on the porch swing with mugs of coffee, lake wind tugging at June's cap. June opened Nora's notebook again, not to hunt, but to remember. On the last page, Nora wrote a line that felt like a hand reaching across time. If my voice returns at night, do not fear it. Use it. Harold stared at the line, then out at the water. Grief had turned into purpose. Family had arrived through loss and truth, and for the first time in 6 years, the house felt like a home again, not a museum of absence. The grandfather clock kept counting. Now the sound did not feel like a warning. It felt like a heartbeat.